Alright, so I've got this side of the coring cut and scribed to the rear to go in because it gets pretty tight in here where I've laid layers and layers of fiberglass. And then when we come to the front, the coring used to end right here, but since we've added some on the top and I've got enough to go beyond that, we did. Now I've scribed this piece to fit in there, and on the other side I will need to scribe this piece. Now here we have this angle that it needs contour to, so it really wants to lay way out here like this. And then we end up with an extra big gap here, which we don't like. And this, of course, doesn't lay flush. So in order to get that to lay flat with this piece, which is the rest of my coring, I need to take my scribe and simply remove a bunch of that material. So we've got our handy dandy scribe tool. And we're going to get pretty aggressive, I think, because I ended up removing a lot from the other one to make it fit. Oh, that's not good. Now, we've got my lines marked on this piece. We'll cut that off, and this cuts real easy just with a razor blade. So I spent a bunch of time thinking about this and prepping so that I can get my coring bed real well and not have any problems with it. And I've come up with this. I've got my coring cut and laid out upside down on some plastic up here so that I can wet the backside out without dripping resin everywhere. I've got my chop strand matting cut to go in the bottom that this coring will lay into. Then I have strips of plastic that are just a bit wider than the coring. Though after I've got it pressed in to the wet chop strand matting, I'll put over the top, because I couldn't figure out how in the world I was going to weight this down. What I ended up doing is cutting a bunch of roofing shingles. 3 bundles, 90 pounds a bundle, 170 pounds worth of strips of roofing shingles that will actually be able to contour to the boat, because the boat is not flat, it goes like this. Now I should be able to get my core bed and have enough weight to lay it all down and not have any air, and make sure that this is laminated to the bottom of the boat real well. Well, this side is laminated to the boat. As you can see, it actually followed this contour and this contour quite well. Some resin came out the edges everywhere, if I can get her to focus and show you that. It's tough with the light, but resin came out all the sides. It feels solid. It's quite good. I'm just happy with it. There's no trouble spots. There's nowhere I didn't see resin come out. It's an interesting contour. And I'm gonna have to do a little bit of sanding because as you can see in some places where my resin was, it trapped some of the asphalt granules from the shingles I used as weights, contourable weights we'll call them. And I'm gonna have to sand that away and suck it out of there before I add thickened resin to the sides and laminate over the top of this. But for now, it's time to go for the other side. I got laid up. I've got the bottom cleaned with acetone. And we'll throw our chop strand down, wet it out, weight it down, get this side done. This is going to be one heck of a boat. In order to avoid that delamination, failure, and rot, I'm filling all of this all the way down to the bottom. As you can see, I'm going to keep working it this way and seal all of this tight, airtight, not just watertight, airtight. If I were to simply laminate a piece of fiberglass over this, there would absolutely be a massive air void here. And you might think, well, how can water get in there? Well, when air changes temperature, water forms. This is very basic. And we don't want water to form anywhere near our balsa coring. To do this correctly isn't easy, but even with a foam coring or any new age stuff, you still want it sealed and airtight. It's fiberglass work. There is a lot of bad tabbing and air voids, even on new boats. It's simply the way things are now. But to do a proper hand layup and do it well, you're going to want to do all of the filleting. And this boat in particular, I think, is very special. It's likely to be a one-off, the only restored Panther around. If you know of one or have one, please let me know. I'd love to see what you did. It's a lot of extra work, it seems like, but tight and right, baby, every day is for boats. Okay, I've got all my filleting on the coring, and I didn't record it, but the other side I've sealed. Now, by sealed, what I mean is when I bed this into the boat, resin came up in quite a few places like that, but there's also places where it didn't come through and there's cracks in between the balsa, right? So that all needs to be filled. You can't have any even small air voids. So this side, what I've done is taken some resin and barely thickened it, mostly like a ketchup consistency, and then went ahead and filled all of those voids and just kept rolling over it until I was very confident that stuff was filled. You know, there's a corner that was broken or cracked, resin hadn't come through from the bottom. So there's a bit of extra resin on top of it, but also that void is filled all the way down. Take some time and some doing, rolling it in hard, using a brush to babysit it and get all of those voids filled and get the coring really sealed before I put a matting over it, make it part of the boat structurally as well. So now I have to do that to this side. And then I'll sand a bit to make sure that I've got a pretty decent radius out of my thickened resin here, and I don't have too much stuff that's overfilled, because there'll be some. And then make sure all my voids are filled, and if they're not, add a bit more. Then we'll laminate it into the boat.